Now, at my appeal, which was on the 2nd of July, nearly 3 months later, the indefinite suspension was removed, but they suspended me for 6 months from the date of that suspension, which effectively gave me a 9-month suspension, so I don't go back till next February up to now. But, you know, I believe at that time they tried to make an example of me, because Unite the Union were supporting me, and the Falkirk debacle came out around that time as well, for which, you know, Unite have now been totally exonerated for that. So, you know, I've had support from the LRC, I've had support from local people around Liverpool, Manchester, Wirral, Bolton, and of course support in Warrington as well, so I'd like to thank them for all their support. So, just to give you some idea, since 2010, I've been into the whips 6 times. This was prior to my suspension. The group had tried to intimidate me, bully me during this time, simply I was trying to put forward alternatives to the budget cuts that we were making. Being a active Unite member, Unite's got a strategy, and I was trying to, you know, implement that strategy. But instead, we put forward what I feel are draconian cuts, and that will see jobs and services disappear. So my council, and I'm sure most Labour councils and other councils, are scraping the bottom of the barrel now. So how on earth are we going to maintain these cuts over the next few years? I just don't know, you know, where we're going to go. And we heard David Sparks say today that, you know, we're going to run out of, we're going to have no services left to be a council for. So, but when I tried to put my alternatives forward to the Labour group at the budget meeting, the deputy chair actually shut me down from speaking. He wouldn't allow me to speak. And I'm still waiting to this day, I'm still waiting for an explanation as to why they stopped me from speaking. So in my view, democracy has died a death within my Labour group. But as an elected member, I will demand to be heard. I won't be kept quiet. All I hear from my leader and the finance people are saying that there's no other way. There's nothing else we can do. But sadly, there are alternatives out there. We've always got a choice, but they don't want to go to that, I'm afraid. So, Warrington Borough Council, again, I'll just harp on a little bit. We increased the council tax at that budget meeting. This is a simple thing that I thought we could have come to an agreement with. They increased the council tax and then increased reserves by £2.5 million, which we could have offset that council tax rise with the welfare funds that were coming in. And I would have been happy with that if they'd have listened to me. But, you know, we've got to safeguard jobs and services by using reserves and borrowing. That's all we've got left at the moment. We've got nothing else to use. And I think this would buy time then for us to, to build a fight back against this coalition, Tory-led coalition government. And Labour councils everywhere, with the exception of a few like our infamous friends here, our comrades, Dean and Gill, and the Southampton Southampton too, and a few others. No one else, everyone else is refusing to even consider these options. So, we all know this government has pledged to cut around 730,000 jobs in the public sector and spending by £80 billion. But, we've got the bedroom tax, we've got universal credit, PIP payments, council tax benefits, and the benefits cap, the discretionary social fund, and legal aid cuts. So, for me, enough is enough, and for our most vulnerable residents as well. So, when it's a choice for the residents to eat or keep warm, really, what we've got to do is make a decision whose side we're on. And also the added dignity of having to go to food banks as well to feed the families. I don't know whether you heard the report from the National Audit Office, and that was about a month, not long ago anyway, because I was on the radio the following day about it. But they said, and this is a government flagship, a government body, saying that the universal credit, the government's flagship welfare reform programme, is is in crisis after concluding that the system was overly ambitious and has not provided value for money for the taxpayer. The National Audit Office also said that it has suffered from weak management and ineffective control and poor governance. So I mean, you know, that's a government body actually criticising this government. The report also added, which surprised me, that £34 million of the £303 million that they've spent so far on the technology, they have to write off £34 million of that money. £34 million of people are going to food banks, just thrown away. And also new figures reveal that the level of jobless families is 3 times higher in the north than it is in the south. So the Labour councils, I feel, should be prioritising people's needs above the greeds of the 1% of the country's riches. When we took control as a Labour council in 2011, we immediately had dismiss and re-engage on the table. Now, we did put up a fight. I supported the unions on the Warrington Borough Council side, and it ended up a big meeting in our regional office, and it got taken off the table. So it just shows that, you know, we can make a difference if we want to stand and fight. We all know Camden's lied to the country from day one, telling us that his austerity plan would increase growth in the economy. But we know that the opposite is true. And we all know that the economy is not fixed, as they're saying, and that borrowing is up, unemployment has risen, with youth unemployment at its highest for 18 years. And women are being disproportionately battered within that. At that time, we invested in the banks and the rail when they were failing. But now society's failing. They want to pull the plug on the most vulnerable, pushing them ever further into depression, drug abuse, family breakups, suicide, giving £30 billion tax breaks to businesses while cutting welfare and tax credit by £30 billion. So enough is enough. Labour councillors acting as Labour councils, I should say, not councillors, are acting as agents of the coalition. They need to stop burying their heads in the sand and start listening to the alternatives. This nasty coalition government wants to cut and privatise public services simply because it believes that the market will prevail. They want businesses to extract profit from public services, schools, hospitals, welfare, and even businesses. So we have to urge our Labour councillors and lobby our councils to ask them to resist these cuts. Show them that they have somewhere to go with the support that's in place. And I'm sure eventually more and more councils will do the right thing. It'll probably be too late then. Everything will be gone. So we need action now. We need to be champions of the alternative. And we need to send a strong message of defiance to this ideological, uncaring Tory-led coalition. And show them that the people have got the guts to stand up to them. And in councils, there are routes that are deemed to be an acceptable budget, but it won't be decided by the views of the council officials, their legal advisors, or even our council executives, but will ultimately be decided by the growing public support against the cuts. As you may have heard Len say today, that if the government, Len McCluskey that is from Unite, if this government forces us outside the law, well, so be it. We will carry on fighting. So what I'm asking now is, and I've sent a letter to all the Labour councils in the North West, asking and urging them, as we start reviewing the budgets for next year, to remember our core values and protect jobs and services, housing, and other amenities. Excuse me. But they've got to remember that the people who voted for us, the people who voted, we've got to remember that the people who voted for us don't want us to be the agents of the coalition, really. Sorry, I've lost my thread there. and the most vulnerable in our society need our help. So, whilst I realise that Labour-led councils in many respects disagree with the government policy, nevertheless, Labour councils have become the direct instruments of implementation of the said policy, as I've said. We are the ones who are actually making the cuts. And it's no comfort to those who are losing their livelihoods and services that it is being done by the person they voted for. So they will remember us at the ballot box. So beware to some Labour councillors. The scale of the cuts to come in 2014-15, on top of the cuts that have already been implemented, means the devastation of public services. This will undermine the ability of the councils to defend and promote the well-being of current and future generations and the future of the local government itself. Westminster and council officers tell us there's no alternative and to the current austerity policy, that it is simply not true. The majority of economists of all persuasions agree that cuts will lead to economic recovery, right? Sorry, it's not true that the majority of forgive me. The majority of the economists of all persuasions agree that cuts will not lead to the economic recovery. When we were told that we had no alternative to carrying out the instructions of a democratically elected government, we have to remember that the present government has no democratic mandate for its current political course. So, in fact, in the last general election, the majority of the people voted against the type of policies that are now being pursued. We councillors in local government do have the power to resist the government cuts and at the same time to reject the dishonest manipulation of our democratic system that this coalition has followed. We should also support the local government workers unions, the unions and the unions, and the notion that there is nothing else we can do is wrong. We need to get that message across. Councils have the legal and financial powers to delay the cuts by drawing on reserves using borrowing powers, working with tenants and unions to avoid evictions and privatisations. This can all be done within the law and cannot be overruled by central government. None of these policies mean setting a deficit budget. It's true that some smaller councils do have large reserves, but the larger ones, some of the smaller councils don't have large reserves, but the larger ones do. And we should ask our finance directors what our prudent levels of borrowing is. Let's place the blame firmly where it belongs, at the door of this government. There are other strategies that the unions are putting forward that can be discussed. The key is to bring out local, bring local communities with you, really. They will rally round if we show them that we are willing to defend them. So remember, if we don't show them bold leadership, they will ultimately remove their vote. Most importantly, United Union and UNISON have a policy that they will support councils who resist the cuts. So I urge you to ask your councils and councillors to reconsider their current position and to work with their colleagues to change the current direction of council policy of implementing government cuts. Please please ask them don't turn their back on the people who depend upon them and fight for the mandate that they were selected upon. But most of all, fight for what they believe in. Just quickly, I just wanted to touch on that. I read a great analogy the other day. It said that unions were the midwives of the Labour Party, and through bodies like the LRC and the Independent Labour Party, we delivered the Labour Party. So 100 years later, the unions are being demonised by the Tories and the media, and even some in our own party. We've talked about severing the link with the unions, but I, for one, want to keep that link. We need to reflect upon our core values and the principles on which our movement was founded. And, you know, we need to look back. We need to remember people like Keir Hardie, who spent his time in Parliament calling for pensions, graduated income tax, fair rents, free schooling, and work for the unemployed, and remember people like Nye Bevan and others who brought us the National Health, the welfare state and the massive house building programme after the war. And through gritted teeth, even Tony Blair's New Labour brought us the minimum wage, the equal rights legislation and a record investment in the National Health. So just today, Ed Miliband, I feel, should have been bolder. He could do worse than look back at our past Labour leaders and recognise that they were at their best when they were at their boldest. Thank you.